everyone, so today I'm gonna build a new element in EHTML framework. For those of you who don't know what it is, I would suggest to watch two previous videos. The link I will put them in the description of this video. But overall, it's just a framework that allows you to extend capabilities of a regular HTML language. So it makes it more of sort of like for templating. You can map data on HTML. You can also use web components. HTML it's 100% compatible with web components. You can declare them in a similar manner. You just use event listeners to hook them up with HTML lifecycle. But other than that, it just works as if you would use them in HTML. So today I'm just gonna build server-sent events, similar to what I built before for WebSockets. So I'm gonna also explain the difference between WebSockets and server-sent events, and then we're gonna build very simple log reader because this is common use case. I feel like for server-sent events. So yeah, let's just get started. So in order to understand how HTML works, let's just examine the WebSocket template. So by the way, templates is something that kind of like cornerstone of the framework. We do a lot of stuff by just using templates, and we customize them with is attribute, and we kind of like declare the logic for this particular extension. So in this case, we just create this. Let's just jump into the example. So for example, here we declare template. We extend it with EWS kind of like keyword. Then of course, we need to declare data src. This is URL to which we connect in order to enable the WebSocket. We also must declare the variable name for that WebSocket so that we can reference to it in other elements. We can also just declare a connection icon query selector, so this thing will show up when template is connected, or rather when WebSocket is connected. And then when it's connected, we also can declare actions on open connection. So in this example, we just show this this icon. So so this is how it works. This template is just primarily connects to the WebSocket, or rather creates a WebSocket connection. And then we can read messages, and we can read messages depending on the format of payload of WebSocket, right? So in this case is we're using a JSON element, basically saying that our payload, like incoming messages and outgoing messages, are in JSON format. So in this particular case, we declare our variable name, which we specified right here. And then we just declare response name for that socket message, and then we can do whatever we want. In this case, we just mapped our socket message to this inner template, which is kind of like reusable, so we can see new messages. This is basic example for, let's say, implementing chats or similar things. And of course, we can also send messages to the socket. Here we again on a trigger we declare our socket name, and then we just submit our form with those input fields. So yeah, that's the basic implementation. Again, I will put the link into the description where I kind of like explain it in more details, but overall this is how it works. So the server sent events kind of different, a little bit different from WebSockets. The main difference, of course, is that in WebSocket it's kind of like we work and we kind of like communicate in two directions, right? And the server sent events, it's more like for broadcasting. So we connect to our server, usually it's kind of like get endpoint, and then server understands that it needs to broadcast messages to us, and it just sends with certain interval those messages. And that kind of application can be I don't know. So basically, those kind of applications that can use server-sent events, for example, those are like as we're gonna build a logger reader, or for example, if you want to track stock market prices, or let's say you want to read headlines of news, or let's say sport events, right? What's going on in a text format. So there are many applications of server-sent events and where they can be useful. So yeah, let's just jump into the code, and let's implement the server-sent events in a way that we did for WebSockets, because in many aspects server-sent events will work in a similar manner. We still will have like data_src, we'll have some kind of like name for our event source, and of course we're gonna have a connection icon and maybe some other things. So yeah, let's see. But the main difference is that we just need to implement only handling incoming messages, because we don't really have the ability to put something in event source, right? So, by the way, event source is already built in the browsers. So here we go. You can read more about documentation. There are some properties that we might use, like for example, ready state. So we can detect different states of our event source. There is also property with credentials that responsible for course handling, and yeah, there is not much to that. So we'll gradually implement this thing. And another thing, I'm gonna build over HTTP2 with my custom framework, backend framework. But overall, it's very similar to what you can see in other frameworks in terms of like how you can build your endpoints. So let's just jump into the code. So we're gonna just create a new template which is called ESSE, which stands for Extended Server-Sent Events. And then we're gonna adjust our eJSON element, because it works only for regular AJAX requests and also with WebSockets. So let's extend it to server-sent events as well. So all right. So the first thing, of course, we need to import our packages that we might need here. So getNode scoped state is it's a function that basically gets the scoped state of our element. So the state management in HTML quite straightforward. We just we go from top to bottom, and we just whenever we map something, we kind of like change the scope of the elements inside of the templates that we map to. So another thing that we might need, evaluate string with params from state. I'm gonna show how it works. Evaluate actions on progress, evaluate actions on open connection, on close connection, stuff like that. So those are kind of like very, very similar functions. Basically, they evaluate attributes in our HTML attributes, so that we can write JavaScript code there. So let's just export our class. As I told you, it's very similar how we use web components. If you decide, for example, if we don't have any framework, you just do the same thing. We extend, in this case, HTML template element. So one thing with HTML, we included polyfill that allows to extend HTML built-in elements for browsers that don't allow this thing. For example, like mobile Safari browser, or Chrome on mobile as well. On iOS, I believe they don't support this thing. So, and now the the one thing that we need to do, of course, is to declare connected callback and constructor. In constructor, we call the constructor of our parent element, and then there are two things that we need to do. We need to create the flag that tells us that HTML activated our element, because the main philosophy of HTML that we activate each element only once. It prevents it prevents a lot of bugs, and overall it's just more straightforward and works very predictable. And of course we need event source name that we're gonna declare or retrieve from attributes later in the logic. So, and in connected callback we need to hook to the HTML activated event, and this happens when this basically happens whenever our element enters the DOM. So HTML detects it by mutation observer, and it activates it and sends us event. So this event guarantees that if HTML activated our element, we can have evaluated attributes with values, and we can also be sure that we can work with it and go along with the functionality that this framework provides. So and then as you can see, we only attach once, right? So once this event listener kind of like executed, we just deattach this thing from our element. So, and inside of this method here, we first of all we just prevent double activation by checking the flag, and if it's activated, we exit. We do early exit by keyword return, and then we just activate our flag to true. Then we just do the main logic, and main logic is in the method run. Here we get our state from this element, so it allows us to use different variables from memory, from mapping, whatever you like, and of course we need to be sure that user specific data src, otherwise we throw an error, and the same goes for event source name. So basically data src is the URL that we create event source for, and then data event source name is something that we can distinguish that event source from other things in our logic. So here it's very simple. We evaluate our data src by the state, because we can map data src from different sources. We can also randomize this URL or do whatever we want. So basically the options are limitless, and the reason why this particular element is not evaluated on event hook is because it's one of those exceptions where it's kind of like more useful to evaluate during the logic, right? So because we can defer this logic, or just to be consistent with other elements. It's more we need to be more consistent, but this is something that it's kind of like difficult to design from logic perspective, because sometimes you want to evaluate certain things immediately, some of the things you just want to evaluate later on, and I don't know, this is something that might change in the future, but overall it's just something that I kind of like came up by using the framework a lot. So just by practice I decided to evaluate during the logic run. So and then we just do event source name. again, we just evaluate this thing. Although in this particular case, I believe we don't really need to do this because it's not an exception. We can just we can just get this attribute. But maybe we just as I believe. Let me just check. I believe that here we also evaluate this thing during a logic run. And let's go to process attributes and let me see. Yeah, as you can see, this is data socket, and this yeah, let's just add this thing here. Let's just add data source, event source, event source. So basically, as you can see from the name of this variable, attribute names to ignore since they must be resolved in their own scope and time. So yeah, those kind of exceptions that don't evaluate or are not evaluated immediately on activation. All right, so let's now get or assign event source name to the object. Then we can do some little things like connection icon selector. It's not really necessary, but if it's specific, we can hide it immediately, and then when the event source is declared, then we can show this connection icon. So in this case, we just create event source where we put event source URL that basically is specified in data src, and then there is one attribute that we can add here. It's called with credentials, and if our template has this attribute, we can use it. Otherwise, we just default to false. So, and then of course we must somewhere to store those things, like to store our event sources. In this case, I'm using I'm just using global variable name with our event source name so that I can refer to it in different parts of our application. And then we just create open event and we attach that event to event source. Here we show our connection icon, and then if our template has data actions on open connection, we can evaluate those actions. And then we just replace everything that's in that template instead of our event sent events template, because we don't really need it. Once the logic is done, we can just show everything that inside. And of course, we define our custom element. So yeah, that's that. And now let's just implement or adjust eJSON, because as I told you, we only have a logic for sockets and also for AJAX. So also we have like caching mechanism in eJSON, but it's not really applicable to server sent events. So all right, so let's just implement this thing. First things first, we need to declare event source name the same way we declared socket name, and if it exists, then we should run event source mode. Let's just create this method. Again, we just get our state from scoped state for this particular node. Then we can get our event sources, and if event source is not defined or not opened yet, we just throw an error. Otherwise, we just get this event source, and then we declare logic that listens to those messages, right? So In this particular case, I mean, there are two ways that we can listen to our messages. We just can assign on message event or callback. It's the case when we don't really specify what kind of type of events we sending from our server. And yeah, it works in a very simple way. We just declare on message callback, which basically a function with event argument. In this particular case, since we inside of eJSON, we assume that our incoming message is a JSON. We parse it and then we evaluate our actions on response in the same way that we do for regular AJAX calls or WebSockets. So yeah, it works in very similar way. Otherwise, we just can specify data event, and we can expect those type of events, and we can attach event listener that corresponds to that name. So here we just get the same response, we parse it, and we evaluate the same thing like we do here. So the logic is basically the same. And then we just unwrap our JSON element, and we just put whatever comes inside instead of our eJSON. Basically, that's how it works in this framework. So yeah, let's just go and build our simple logger app. So I would like to start with our backend. So basically, it's just one endpoint to which we connect, and then that endpoint generates logs. So I already kind of like created an array with certain examples of logs, system logs, and I created them in markdown format so that we can see how eMarkdown can be also used in this type of scenarios. As you can see, each log has kind of like format for markdown text. Here we use bold text, cursive text, and just regular text as well. And then we just get random index in this array, and we just send it to the client. Very kind of like silly, naive implementation, but it's just to show the idea rather than to create something complicated. All right, so the first things first. In this custom framework, we declare our endpoint. In this particular case, all we need is just incoming stream with headers. And here, the first thing that we do, we just respond with status code 200. So the status starts with a double column char because we're using HTTP 2. And then all we need to do is just to declare these headers. So for example, content type is text/event stream. It's not, for example, not application JSON or other type of things. We need to tell the browser that it's event stream. So, and then we're using cache control to not mess up with caching, and then we do content encoding as well. So the first thing, we just stream and write that we kind of like connect to this endpoint. It's just more for debugging and ensuring that everything works, because this kind of messages from the server are ignored by the browser. So yeah. And then let's just declare a counter just to be sure how many times we generate the log for that particular session. And then we just create an interval where we increment our counter. Of course, we can log our counter on a server, but I don't think it's really necessary here. And then we just write in our stream and send that message. So our message basically contains ID, which is counter in this session. Then we type event type. So in this case, it's log. We can basically specify here any type of event. And then we just send data in JSON format. We stringify JSON where we declare our counter. I don't know if it's needed, but just nice addition. And then we just we just send our message, which basically the random domain lock here. So yeah, and then we can declare simple function cleanup, which basically cleans up the interval whenever the stream is aborted or closed, or for example there is some error, so that we don't overload our server, because basically it's a long poll, right? It's just it's very heavy thing to support long term, especially if we have like multiple connected long polls. So yeah. All right, so let's go and build our front end, which is basically the thing that we are most interested in. So here we just we declare our EHTML library. We connect it to our front end. It's a no-build library, and it uses import map. And all we do is just we import the main function in the HTML that basically runs mutation observer and detects all the changes in the DOM. So in this case, we just decided to create a slot element where we will be displaying all our logs. Then we declare template, which is extended server sent events. And here we need to specify data src to our logs endpoint. By the way it works, we declare this endpoint in our backend. So it's very declarative framework. You can check it out. It's called Node.js, and I'll put the link in the description of this video as well. So yeah, I really like how it's implemented. It's very declarative. Here we just run our server, which basically runs our application, where we can have multiple static folders and we can have multiple APIs. So in this case, it's just endpoint with logs get request and the logs endpoint, which basically we implemented right here. So yeah. All right, so let's go and continue with the implementation for our front end. Here we just declare with credentials. We set it to true. It's as you remember, it's responsible for with credentials property. Then we need to declare event source name, and then we basically done. All we need to do is just to declare this for properties to connect to our server event source. And then we can handle incoming messages. We can do this by eJSON attribute. We declare data event source log events, the same one that we declared here. So for regular AJAX requests, we just use data src. For sockets, we use data socket attribute, and for event source, we just use data event source attribute. And then we just also tell our eJSON that we are interested only in a log event. So for example, if we, let me just go here. So for example, if I'm gonna change this line to, I don't know, to sport event or some other word like message or anything you can imagine. So it wouldn't work, right? Because we are interested only for this particular event type. And then we can declare our response name, to which we can refer in our data actions on response. It works in a very similar way if you're familiar with this framework, how it works with AJAX requests and WebSockets. Very straightforward. And in data actions on response, we map our log event to log template, and log template is with ID log. So template with ID log is irreusable template because we need to map the same thing multiple times. And then we just declare our object name for this particular irreusable template, and we tell that we need to see new messages on top of on top of our parent element, which is basically the slot element. And then since we decided to use Markdown, we use another element, which is in Markdown. It allows us to render text it just basically converts Markdown text to HTML. And yeah, that's kind of it really. So let me just run our app. All right, and let's just go. And as you can see, those events going on top. And if we just refresh our page again, we can see those events in our dev console. So yeah, that's very simple, right? Just 46 lines of code, considering that, half of this thing is just what comes to head element and some of the boilerplate we have here. Super simple, super easy. And you can imagine that in other frameworks, front-end frameworks, it's achieved with a lot more setup and with more moving parts, right? So here we just declare our framework, EHTML, which is basically no build, meaning that, let's just go here and you can actually examine every file as it is. And all of them basically are cached or can be cached, and yeah, it works very, very nicely. So yeah, whenever we close the tab, the server will detect that, and or rather the browser will abort the connection and server will stop sending our messages. So as you could see, this thing is cursive and this thing is bold, as we declared right here. Yeah, so yeah, it works really nicely. So that's what I wanted to show you today, guys. Thank you, and see you soon.